Welcome to PM Ready, your guide to becoming PMP certified. This is the lesson on cost-benefit analysis, Part 1. This lesson covers the details of the economic feasibility study or cost-benefit analysis that's included in the business case. It covers the payback period or break-even point, return on investment, the cost-benefit ratio, net present value, and the internal rate of return. The payback period or break-even point basically answers the question of how long will it take to get our investment back. For example, let's suppose that you want to make a change to a business process. That change will require about $10,000 in training expenses. But once the training is done, the improvement in the business process you expect will yield you about $2,000 per month in cost savings. Economic feasibility studies typically include a table something like this one, though usually a bit more complex, but we'll keep it simple for now. You'll see it's a time-phased table, meaning that it has time across the top of the table. January, February, March, April, and so on, has the months. And it shows how the expenses and savings will be realized from month to month. In the first column, you can see cash out is minus $10,000, meaning that's a representation of the $10,000 we'll need to spend in the training. The next row is cash in, which is where we represent benefits or incoming cash, or in this case, savings. This is where we record the $2,000 per month that we expect to save as a result of this training. Notice that this has a 1-year horizon. It goes from January through December. Some of these tables will go longer and some shorter, depending on the type of project that you have. The next line is total cash in. This represents the total cumulative savings over time. So you see in February you save $2,000. In March you save another $2,000, so you now have saved $4,000 so far. April you save another $2,000, so now you're up to $6,000 in savings. And you see how this grows until it finally reaches the point that in June you've saved $10,000. Now here in the next line it shows the balance. January, of course, you've spent $10,000, you're $10,000 negative. In February, you've saved $2,000, and so now you're only $8,000 in the hole, or $8,000 negative. Eventually, you reach the point in June where you've recouped this $10,000 investment, and your balance is now zero, and everything past that is profit, or net gain. As you can see from this table, the break-even point is in June. Our payback period is 6 months, January, February, March, April, May, June. 6 months to get this investment to pay for itself. This is a very simple and easy to understand way of measuring the business case or the economic feasibility of a proposed project. It has its pros and cons, but it has the advantage of being simple and easy to communicate. But it doesn't have the depth of analysis that some of the other techniques have that we'll get to later. Return on investment, abbreviated ROI, is another simple measure of economic feasibility. Let's take a simple example in which you invest $100, and at the end of the investment period, it has grown to $108. The ROI formula is profit divided by investment. So in this case, it would be the $8 profit that you made divided by the $100 investment that you initially made, yielding a return on investment of 8%. Here's another example. Suppose you decide to launch a new product line. So you invest $1 million in this new product line, and in the end, it grows to $1.2 million. The ROI formula for this is the $200,000 profit that you made divided by the $1 million initial investment, which yields 20% for your return on investment. This is a measure that is simple because it's easy to understand and to calculate. It's also a very common measurement. Part of the reason that it's common is that it is so easy to compare one investment to another. However, notice that it has some disadvantages. One is that it doesn't account for the size of the investment. You can't tell from the return of 8% or 20% or whatever whether the investment has been large or small. It also doesn't account at all for time. The ROI doesn't say that it's an 8% return in a year or 10 years. And that can make a lot of difference. An investment that yields 8% in 1 year is pretty good. 20% in 1 year is definitely good. But 20% over 10 years is not such a great investment. The benefit-cost ratio is another simple measure of economic feasibility. It's very similar to ROI. It's measured just a little bit differently. Instead of taking your net gain and dividing it by your investment, you instead take the total benefit and divide by your original cost. So using our previous example of an investment in a new product line, where you invest $1 million and the gross output of that is $1.2 million, it's a $200,000 net benefit. In the benefit-cost ratio, you put the whole $1.2 million on the top and then divide it by the $1 million investment, and that gives you 1.2. That's the same as a 20% ROI, but it's just measured a little bit differently as a ratio of 1.2, or it could also be expressed as 120%. But that could be a little confusing with ROI. So BCR is usually measured just as a ratio and expressed as 1.2 in this case. Notice that this is also a simple measure. Also has the problem of not having a time frame. Also notice that a BCR greater than 1 is profitable and a BCR less than 1 is not profitable. A discussion about the return on investments or on economic feasibility studies wouldn't be complete without also discussing the relationship between risk and return and the concept of risk premium. The risk premium is basically the idea that higher risk investments are going to pay higher returns. Or another way to look at this is that higher returns are riskier. Basically, the higher the return, the greater the risk. You could gain more, or you could also lose more. If you're going to invest in something risky, then you need to be compensated for that risk. And so the riskier something is, the greater the return that's offered, but also the greater the risk that you could lose a lot or everything. Let's take some examples. One example is the U.S. Treasury bond, which is an investment that's over 10 years' time. It pays 3% per year. It's got payments that are given to you twice per year. It's something that's considered very low risk. The chances of you not getting your money back from this are extremely low, which is why the return on this is just 3%. On the other hand, if you invest in the stock market, suppose you pick a combination of stocks that yields about 8%, that's a better yield, but stocks go up and down more. They have their ups and downs and crashes and booms. And so because of that increased risk, you get a higher return. But you may not always get that level of return. We know from experience that the market has its crashes and people can lose quite a bit in the stock market. So that's very different from a treasury bond where you're pretty much guaranteed this payment twice a year for 10 years. Another thing to consider when it comes to stocks is something called beta, which is a measurement of volatility. So suppose you're looking at the stock market overall and how it goes up and down and fluctuates. If you have a stock that fluctuates along with the market, when the market goes up, it goes up just as much. When the market goes down as a whole, it goes down just as much. That has a beta of 1. However, if you have a stock that every time the stock market goes up or down a little bit, it goes up or down a lot, then it has a beta that's greater than 1. And that captures this idea that this particular stock is more volatile than your average stock. And then, of course, there are other stocks that have a beta less than 1, that are more stable and less volatile. In general, stocks with more volatility or higher beta will have a higher risk, and so they'll have a higher return. In order to understand the more advanced economic feasibility formulas, more commonly used in a cost-benefit analysis, it's necessary to first understand the concept of the time value of money. What is the time value of money? Well, let me ask you this. Would you rather get paid today or in a month? Why is that? Well, it may be because you have bills that you need to pay now, so you'd rather be paid today than a month from now. Another reason is that money today could be invested and you could earn some interest between now and the end of the month. There's also uncertainty. You're not sure what the future holds, so you'd rather have your money now so that you can do something with it now than to wait and get it later and perhaps not get it at all. The idea of the time value of money is that the same amount of money today is worth less in the future. Or looking at it the other way around, a particular sum of money to be acquired in the future is worth less today. For example, $100 today might be worth $110 a year from now. Or, the other way around, $100 in a year might be worth $90 today. Part of the reason for this is inflation, of course, but part of it is more than just inflation. Because even without inflation, even without the uncertainty of the future, there's a difference between money today and money in the future. For example, take a U.S. Treasury bill. It doesn't pay any interest. It's simply an IOU that 1 year from now, it'll pay, say, $100. So that's $100 a year from now. If you go out and try and buy a U.S. Treasury bill that matures 1 year from now at $100, what's the price to purchase that? Today, it's about $98. So you can see that there's about a 2% amount of time value of money built into the price of $100 a year from now. This concept of the time value of money is represented by the terms present value and future value. Present value, abbreviated PV, is the value today of a sum of money in the future. And future value, abbreviated FV, is the value in the future of a sum of money. Here are a couple of examples to illustrate the use of these terms. In the first example, let's suppose we invest $100 at 3% for 1 year. This could be something like a municipal bond issued to fund a local school. The present value is $100 because that's your initial value of money today. In 1 year, this investment will return $103. So the future value is $103. In another example, suppose you have a $100 U.S. Treasury bill, or T-bill. This has a face value of $100, meaning that 1 year from now, when it matures, you'll receive $100. So the future value is $100. But it doesn't sell for $100 today. It sells at a discount to account for the time value of money. And if what it sells at now is $98, then the present value, or PV, is $98. Calculating future value is easy when the interest is calculated just once at the end of the investment. But what if it's an investment that lasts for several years, and that interest earned is calculated and added to your investment every year? This is the formula for calculating future value, abbreviated FV, when interest is calculated at regular intervals during the duration of the investment. FV equals PV, the present value, times 1 plus R, which is the rate of return, to the nth power. Each interval is called a period, meaning a period of time. In this example, we use 1 year as the time period, but it could be anything. Semi-annually, as is the case for multi-year U.S. Treasury bonds, or quarterly, or monthly, or even daily. For example, suppose you have $100 and you invest it at 3% interest per year. In the first year, you'll have your $100 grow to $103. And if you use a formula, you can see it's $100 times 1 plus the interest rate of 3%. So it's 1.03. Then in year 2, you take that $103 that you now have and multiply it again by 1.03, which gives you $106.09. You can also see how this works in one single step rather than doing it year by year. You see the future value is this $100 times 1.03 twice. So you can take that 1.03 and combine it into 1.03 to the second power and multiply it by 100 to get your $106.09. This is what is known as compound interest, meaning that you're basically earning interest on your interest. In that first year, you earned $3 in interest, and now you earn interest on your $100 plus on the $3. So it's compounding that interest. And now it's time for a little quiz. Let's start with this one. What is the payback period for an initial investment of $1,000 that brings in a profit of $100 per month for 2 years? A, 1 month. B, 10 months. C, 1 year. Or D, 2 years. The answer is B, 10 months, because that $100 per month over 10 months will bring in $1,000, which will recoup or pay back the initial $1,000 investment. What is the return on investment for an initial investment of $1,000 that brings in a profit of $100 per month for 2 years? A, 20%, B, 120%, C, 140%, or D, 240%. The answer is C, 140%, because return on investment is the profit divided by the initial investment. The profit over the course of 2 years is the $2,400 it brings in minus the $1,000 of the initial investment, or $1,400, divided by the initial investment of $1,000, or 1.4, expressed as a percentage, is 140%. What is the benefit cost ratio for an initial investment of $1,000 that brings in a profit of $100 per month for 2 years? Is it A, 0.2, B, 1.2, C, 1.4, or D, 2.4? The answer is D, 2.4, because the benefit-cost ratio is the total benefit of $2,400 that it brings in over 2 years, divided by the initial investment of $1,000, or 2.4. And that's it for part 1. PM Ready is a publication of PM Guaranteed and is based on the Project Management Institute's PMBOK guide.